All right, so this is the Coke versus Diet Coke demo from today. The question we are wondering about is, will cans of Coke and Diet Coke float, sink, or suspend in water? First thing you're going to do is write down observations of a can of Coke or a can of Diet Coke. Since you are doing this at home, hopefully you know what a can of Coke and a can of Diet Coke look like. You could kind of make observations about the shape of the can, the size of the can, the texture, the feel of what a can of Coke and Diet Coke feel like, things like that. So you might want to pause here and take a moment to fill out your bullets. And then next we're going to make a claim or a hypothesis. A hypothesis is an explanation of an observation or scientific problem, kind of like an inference. And it's written in a way that leads to further investigations, because we want to test an experiment and investigate your claim or hypothesis. A hypothesis may not be supported by an experiment, and that's okay. This leads to valuable information for scientists. It's all right if an experiment does not show the results that you were expecting. That just means that there's a different answer than the one you thought, and time to do a new experiment to figure out what that answer really is. And in science, a claim or hypothesis is only supported after many scientists have produced the same results. If I do a test and I get the results, I can't just take that as the end-all be-all. I need to do that test multiple times and see if I get the same results. And then I need to have other scientists do the same test to see if they get the same results as me. And once multiple scientists have done the same test multiple times, and if all the results are similar, then you could say that your claim or hypothesis has been supported. So here's where you're going to make your claim. Underneath your T-chart, you're going to create your claim. The can of Coke will blank, and the can of Diet Coke will blank. So when we put them in the water, do you think they will float or sink or suspend? Maybe they're both going to sink. Maybe they're both going to float. Maybe they'll both suspend. Maybe one will sink and one will float, or one will float and one will sink. One will float and one will suspend. One will suspend and one will sink. Whatever you think might happen, I want you to fill in the blanks with either sink, float, or suspend. And here's where we're going to fill out our evidence. So in order to test our claim or hypothesis, we need to know some things about our cans of Coke and Diet Coke. And since this is a density experiment, we need to know about their density. Density has to do with mass and volume. So that's where we're going to start, with the mass of the Diet Coke. When we put on the balance today, it came out to 379 grams. The volume of the Diet Coke is 380 centimeters cubed. And since we're putting it in water, we need to know the density of water. And we know that that is 1 gram per centimeter cubed. The regular Coke, when we found the mass of that, it came out to 388 grams. The volume of the regular Coke is also 380 centimeters cubed. And again, the density of water is 1. Then we place the can of Coke and the can of Diet Coke into the water. And I'll show you a picture of what that looks like so you can see. But the can of Coke sank and the can of Diet Coke floated. How'd you do? Was your claim or hypothesis supported? If so, in that box, right, the claim was supported. If it wasn't, if you didn't say sink and then float, even if you only got half of it, it's still not supported. So in the box, right, the claim was not supported. All right, now we have to get to the reasoning. We did our test, we have our evidence, we need to understand why. Why did the Coke sink and the Diet Coke float? So here's where things get a little tricky. The evidence supports or does not support the claim that Diet Coke blank in water. So here's where you write in what your claim was. What did you say? Did you say Diet Coke was going to sink? Did you say Diet Coke was going to float? Did you say Diet Coke was going to suspend? That's going to go here. If you said that Diet Coke was going to float, you can highlight or underline supports. The evidence supports the claim that Diet Coke floated in water. If you said sink or suspend, you would highlight or underline does not support. The evidence does not support the claim that Diet Coke sinks or suspends in water. And this is because the density of Diet Coke, is it less than, more than, or equal to 1 gram per centimeter cubed? So, based on our evidence, we can see that Diet Coke has a density that is less than 1 gram per centimeter cubed. And this is what caused the Diet Coke to float. Evidence 2. The evidence supports or does not support the claim that Coke blank in water. What did you write in your claim? Did you say that Coke floated, or will sink, or will suspend? Whatever you originally thought goes here. If you said that the Coke would sink, you highlight or underline the word supports. The evidence supports the claim that Coke sank in water or sinks in water. If you wrote float or suspend, the evidence does not support, highlight that, does not support the claim that Coke floated or suspended in water. And this is because the density of Coke, is it less than, more than, or equal to 1 gram per centimeter cubed? It is more than. And this is why the Coke would sink. The density is more than water, it's sinking. Less than water, it's floating. The evidence supports or does not support the claim that Coke blank and Diet Coke blank. So here is where you write your original claim. What did you originally think? And then, was the evidence supporting your claim or does not support your claim? So were you accurate or not? Highlight the one that fits. And that's because in the demonstration, the can of Coke sank and the can of Diet Coke floated. Pause here if you need to catch up. So we're going to keep explaining. Let me erase these guys here. The very last part of your sheet. Density is the relationship between mass and volume. The volume of the cans is the same, but the mass of each one is different. The mass of the Diet Coke was less, the mass of the Coke was more. This is what caused them to sink or float. The Coke sank and the Diet Coke floated in water because substances that are less dense float on top of substances that are more dense. Pause here if you need to catch up before I go on to showing you the densities. So here's the information. The Diet Coke has a volume of 380 and a mass of 379. In order to get the density, we divide, and that gives us 0.99, just a little under 1. For the Coke, the volume is the same, 380. The mass is much more, 388. When we divide, we get a density of 1.02. So you can see that the Diet Coke is less than the water, and the Coke is a little bit more than the water. This is because of the amount of sugar. Coke has so much more sugar in it, 39 grams of sugar packed into the volume, where Diet Coke doesn't have as much. So Coke has a lot more mass because of the sugar in the same amount of volume, making it more dense. And here's a picture. We've got the Diet Coke floating and the regular Coke sinking. If you have any questions, make sure you see Ms. Wiseau.